We have arrived at the seventh day of the first week. The seventh day, also called the Sabbath day. Chapter 1 of Genesis is not a work of science, but it is not an anti-scientific work either. It is rather a simple synopsis of comprehensive knowledge of our universe. And the days of creation correspond to the different sciences that were recognized in Greco-Roman antiquity. Day 1 has to do with questions of metaphysics. What existed before the universe? Can other universes exist besides this one? And how does our universe relate to theirs? Day 2 has to do with questions of physics, the mechanics of the physical universe, how space and matter relate to each other. Day 3 fields the science of botany, the study of plants, plant life in the oceans, plant life on the land. Day 4 zeroes in on the great science of astronomy, the study of the stars from the Earth's point of view, but it was related by the Greeks also to the study of geography, the study of the Earth from the stars' point of view. Day 5 opens out the field of zoology, the study of life forms, of life in the sea and life in the air, and also winged life on the land. Day 6 continues the zoological sphere with the land animals and leading eventually to anthropology, the study of humanity. The greatest of the sciences in the ancient and medieval reckoning was the science of theology, the study of God. And God has a day in the first week too, devoted entirely to contemplation of things divine, and that is day 7. So here we have arrived at the true climax. It's not the creation of man, it's the revelation of God, and the revelation of God in humanity. So, let's hear what Genesis has to say about how we should think about God at least one day out of 7. Finished were the skies and the land and all their array. On day 7, Elohim put a finish to his works, those he had done. He rested on day 7 from his works, all those he had done. Elohim blessed day 7 and made it holy. On it indeed, resting from all the works which Elohim had made for them to be done. Thus were the begettings of the skies and of the land at their creation. Day 7 is so important that one of the 10 commandments is about it. Remember the day of Sabbath to make it holy, in the Exodus version, and keep the day of Sabbath to make it holy, in the Deuteronomy version. Both versions coalesce in an identical text in the 2 following verses. 6 days must you work and perform all your tasks, but day 7 is a Sabbath for Adonai your Elohim. Perform no tasks. Neither you, nor your son or your daughter, your slave or your handmaid, or your beast of burden, or anyone alien to you within your gates. For in 6 days Adonai made the skies and the land, the sea and all that is in it, and rested on day 7. For this reason, Adonai blessed the day of Sabbath and made it holy. That is the explanation for the commandment in Exodus. Deuteronomy gives a different reason. Remember, you too were a slave in the land of Egypt, but Adonai your Elohim led you out of there with firm hand and upheld arm. For this reason, Adonai your Elohim commanded you to enforce the day of Sabbath. The commandment of Sabbath rest is actually a dispensation from another commandment, the commandment to work. After the fall, God will tell Adam, "You shall toil for your bread and earn your bread by the sweat of your brow." But the exception is on the Sabbath day. But the exception was given before the commandment to work. You shall rest from work before you even have to work. This tells us that the commandment teaches us something about human nature that goes beyond our earthly economics. We are not merely here on earth to struggle for survival. We are also here on earth to rest on the 7th day and contemplate the meaning of things. If all we do is work, then we're missing the whole point of being here in the first place. Apparently, from the way the Bible lays it out, we were meant to rest with God all the time. And we only were commanded to work after we had shown that we were not good partners for resting with God. But even though the punishment of work was given to us, on the 7th day, we preserve the primeval leisure that belongs to the human person and is a foreshadowing of the heavenly presence before God. So the dispensation was given before the obligation. The commandment tells us to do what we would have been doing anyway if we hadn't been so troublesome to God. The rabbis say that in the garden there was one commandment: thou shalt not eat of the tree. And because we couldn't control ourselves, that's how we ended up with hundreds of commandments later on in the Bible. If we had been good, we would have been left with one commandment, but since we couldn't keep that one, we had to be given many others. The commandment to keep holy the Lord's Day is, I should say, a foretaste of heaven given to us in the disguise of an order. We're told to do what we should want to do anyway. Of course, with all the commandments, we should not want to kill, we should not want to steal, we should not want to cheat on each other's spouses. No, we shouldn't want to do all of those things. But we should want to rest. And the commandment tells us to do it on the 7th day. I don't think we realize what a tremendous contribution the chapter 1 of Genesis makes to the social life of the entire human race in our times. You may be a Jew, you may be a Christian, you may be a Catholic, you may be a Protestant, you may be a believer, you may be an unbeliever, you may have all kinds of different beliefs, but everybody seems to know what day of the week it is. It was not so in ancient times. In the times of the Old Testament and of the New Testament, the week was a property of Jewish culture and then of Christian culture. The Romans had an 8-day work week, but it didn't include any day of rest. The wealthy people rested all the time unless they wanted to play at doing things. And the poor people had to slave away all the time, and they were enslaved too. They were called slaves, and they worked like slaves. So a few of the people worked none of the time, and most of the people rested none of the time. But for the Jews, you are supposed to rest, and your children are supposed to rest, and your slaves are supposed to rest, and the aliens that live in your city are supposed to rest. This is social legislation. This is social justice. But what can we say about the loss of worker rights, where people no longer have a day off together, where daddy's day off may be Wednesday and mommy's day off may be Friday, and maybe mommy and daddy have no day off at all because they're working 2 jobs? Not good. When they come to the day after the day of rest, they will not be rested. And we're going to talk about that 8th day next time. See you then.